What's up, everyone? How you doing? Welcome to Flywheel's Agency Spotlight web series. My name is Davey Owens, and in this series, I'm sitting down with agency owners and freelancers to talk about how they started their business, how they grow their business, and everything they've learned along the way. In today's episode, I'm joined by Kristin DK of the agency Grain Mortar. She is the co-founder and operations director at Grain Mortar, and they've worked with clients like Facebook, Twitch, Twilio, and Google. Today, we'll be talking about how they actually landed one of those clients, as the theme of today is how I landed my first big client. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining us. And Kristin, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so let's kick things off. How did Grain Mortar find your first big client, or how did they find you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with a little bit of a longer answer, so I believe it was in 2013, maybe end of 2013, beginning of 2014, where, we got our first big opportunity with a big client, which was Google. And that was super exciting. How they came to us, I believe, is through just finding our work online. And so in the early days of our company, we really just focused on getting our work out there online and through whatever means possible. And we were doing a lot of galleries. So we would launch a website and we'd submit it to like a CSS gallery, or and we'd also promote it on our website, on social media. Like we would just kind of blast it out there. And each time that we would do that, we would get an influx in traffic, which was fantastic. And then that helped our SEO and so on and so forth. And it was just kind of this spiral effect. But I think, one of the biggest reasons why our work was getting noticed is because we had focused our efforts on doing some really interesting and fun illustrative work for a couple of events. And one of those was Bar Camp. Bar Camp is like a fun little unconference that we're used to happen every year in Omaha. And it's actually kind of a national event. They have them all over the place. And so we would do like a full-on blown out brand and a bunch of illustrations and website design and development, all of that. And we would just make it really, really awesome. And we would do it for next to nothing because we just really wanted to make it a portfolio piece and get the work do the work that we really wanted to do. And sometimes on client projects, you can't necessarily, go crazy with what you want to do. You have to work with the client and make sure that it works for their business. And so with Bar Camp, it was just kind of, there was no rules, which was really fantastic. And so we used that as a stepping stone really to kind of bolster our portfolio work, which was, I think, key in attracting Google and attracting others after that.
Great. So to go off of that, doing work for next to nothing or free, that could be kind of a trap that a lot of creatives fall into because they might end up falling into this routine of doing really cheap work or free work for exposure. How does Grain Mortar, or how did you in the beginning anyways, kind of distinguish between like, this is a project we want to do and kind of donate our time to because we're passionate about it versus this is a project that, they just want free work for the sake of free work, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be discerning in that. And I think that's a great point to bring up because it is super important to not give away creative work for free. I mean, we are artists. We do this for a living. This is our livelihood. However, I think you also have to understand where you are as an artist, what level of experience you have makes a difference. And so, when you're early on, like getting a corporate job, you get an internship. A lot of times you're not getting paid, for an internship, or you're working very, cheaply as kind of an entry level or whatever. I think, we look at it at the same way with creative work as well. Like in those early days, we needed something. We needed to bolster our portfolio. And so we were getting something out of that process. And it was our choice to make. in saying we feel strongly about Bar Camp and its mission, and we love it, and we were organizers of the event too, and so it was easy. It was like, oh, we'll just do this. But you know, I think you have to identify that. So like if you're, you know, in college and you're or in design school or whatever, and you're like, gosh, I really want to build my portfolio, but no one's paying me right now, or no one will pay me. Well, then, you know, do some work, you know, do some work pro bono and see if you can get that portfolio looking pretty nice and tight before you, you know, start asking for however much an hour, you know. I think that is perfectly acceptable. Although I think that you also have to temper that with, you know, what is this client? Is this client approaching me for free work? Are they trying to take advantage of me? Or is this something that I'm going after and saying, hey, like, I'd really love to do this for you. And I'm getting something out of it, which is experience and the ability to promote it. And a lot of times you don't have to work totally for free. You can, you can say, a reasonable rate that would still get you, paid for your work, but that, could also help with that portfolio building. So, yeah.
So I know that when it comes to winning bigger clients, it sometimes could really come down to the pitch. So what was the pitch like for Google? And like what format, what process, what was necessary for that?
Yeah. So when they came to us, they were already kind of, sold on the work that we had done, and they liked the style and all of that. And so I think that kind of vetting had already been done before they contacted us, which was great. But then, anytime that you speak to an initial client, for the first time, there's going to be a level of, proving yourself and making sure that they know that you can handle the project well, that you're competent, that you can, write a professional email and, just the little things, honestly, more of those, soft skills. And so, as well as the hard skills of, can they actually get the work, do the work and execute it properly? And so really it was just kind of a measure of, making sure that they knew we were, competent enough to handle it. So. Yeah.
Why do you think they said yes to you?
I don't know. I think, I just like to put it on the work. I think the work that they saw was great. And, I hope that they saw that, we were eager for the work and that, we were excited about it and that we were going to do a great job. I think one of the things that we always focus on is just, it's not about the money for us. It's not about, obviously we're a business, we want to grow the business, whatever. But the first and foremost thing that we care about all the time is the work. Are we going to be able to do great work for this client? And so I think that probably comes across when we speak to clients for the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think they can sniff out desperation pretty easily, especially at that level. I'm sure they're used to it.
For sure. Yep. And thankfully at that point, we weren't desperate for work. We were, a few years in, we were doing great. This was a huge opportunity. So it's, there's always a few butterflies in your stomach, like, oh, I hope they pick us, or I hope we don't screw this up. But yeah, thankfully we weren't like dying for the business. It was just, wow, this would be such a good opportunity. And so I think that we just came to the table with a genuine excitement and a genuine, love for the craft and love for the work. And I think that's why we got it, honestly. So, yeah.
So how did you and your team feel like once you got that approval, once Google accepted your bid or your pitch, how did the team feel at the beginning of the project?
Yeah, I think we were really excited. In fact, I know we were really excited. There's also a few nerves, you want to make sure you do a good job and that, not going to screw up. So I think we just came at it with, kind of all hands on deck, like, okay, we're going to get this thing done. And so, yeah, a lot of excitement.
Great. After the project was wrapped up, did your business change at all? Were you guys landing bigger clients? Did you have like a more refined process, anything like that?
Yeah. So that's kind of two questions. I would say business did, get better. I think they're, once you have kind of a name like that, people attach a lot of credibility to you. And even if you had credibility before and then now you just, happen to work with a bigger company, like, oh, okay, great. We'll hire those guys, for the name. But which is fine. That's kind of how the world works. But I did notice an increase in, kind of inquiries and people contacting us for work. And then not only that, but just kind of a higher, caliber of company as well. Companies that had been in business for quite, a long time, or companies that were in big tech. For example, after we worked with Google, we had an opportunity to work with Facebook. We had, an opportunity to work with companies like Twitch and Twilio, and even did some work for Nickelodeon. Like there's just quite a few more opportunities like that, which was exciting. But as far as, kind of what we learned from the process, I think that was really important, because in working with a company that runs like Google or runs like Facebook, I mean, these are big tech. And so you get a very high level of attention to detail. Like their teams know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. They're experts. Most of them have, gone to Stanford and have all sorts of qualifications that, scare the crap out of you. And you're like, wow, everyone is so much smarter, in this room than I am. But that's great, because then you get to level up. You get to be around people who are super duper smart and knowledgeable in their field. And not only that, but in skills that maybe that you have that you can also level up. So what I mean by that is communication skills and, even business development, like learning how, certain things work in certain scenarios. I don't know if that makes any sense, but essentially it's a huge level up, not only from the work perspective, but from just from a professional perspective, like professional growth perspective. So that was great. I think, some of the nuts and bolts of like how we grew, or what we learned from that is, working with a team that is that smart and, that fast paced, that makes you better, because you have to keep up. And your team has to make sure that they do the things that are expected from the other side, on the client side. And so, yeah, I mean, you just kind of, get your roller skates on. So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Kind of going off of that, were there any kind of unique challenges when working with Google? Did you have to learn not just a process like we talked about, but like, were there any other specific challenges that you guys faced when working with such a high caliber client?
I think project management definitely leveled up quite a bit after that. When you're working with, a lot of our clients before that point had been, small businesses. We're probably working with the CEO, or the founder, and he maybe had a marketing team of 1 to 3 people. But when you work with a company like Google, the whole department, I don't even know how many hundreds of people or thousands of people, are in these departments, and you get, a select number of people to work on your piece of the project. But, within that, they have another level that they need to go up for approvals, and another level that they need to go up for approvals. And depending on the high, or the level of, importance of that project, you could be talking to, 6 levels deep. I don't know. But, and so there's a lot of pressure there. And there's also a lot of project management there. So, making sure that consolidated feedback is coming through, and it's not just like 17 people giving you feedback that you then have to consolidate, like things like that. We learned, through going through those processes with bigger companies. And so now, it's just second nature to us. It's like, oh yeah, like we know how to project manage this. This seems like a crazy ball of wax. We can do it. We've done this before. So there's that level of confidence that you get, that just comes from experience.
Yeah, totally. If you can go back to Grain Mortar pre-Google and give yourself any kind of advice, or even if you're talking to a small agency now or like a new freelancer, what kind of advice would you give them to land bigger clients?
Yeah, I would say number one is just focus on your craft 100%. These bigger companies, they know they can spot bad design or like played out design or just design that's just, it's not striking, it's not compelling. They can spot that from a mile away. And so making sure that the craft is there and the attention to detail. So we've done a lot of development work for Google as well. And we do development at Grain Mortar. And so that I include that in the craft. Like it's not just the design, but also on the dev side too. Like you got to know what you're talking about and you got to know how to execute. If they're asking, hey, can you do this for us? Or can you provide a project a project bid for us? And you say, yeah, sure. It's Google. I'm going to learn how to do it or figure out how to do it. Like probably not the best approach. Like you've got to be able to make sure that you can actually execute on what they're saying. So anyway, that's a side point. But yeah, I think, making sure that the quality of work is there first and foremost, especially for younger companies, like experience, get as much experience as you possibly can. And we worked all the time in the beginning just to kind of hone our skills. So that's number one. And then number two, like if you are approached with an opportunity, don't get too nervous. Make sure that you have a really good workflow written out for project/account management, that you have a really good, kind of approach to design. So like, what's your philosophy behind it or what's your, what's your approach? And then also I think your company values, I think have a lot to do with it too. Like people want to work with somebody who's going to deliver on time and on budget and not, not be just terrible to work with. They want to work with people who are kind and nice and, can, when things kind of get stressful or whatever, don't just drop the ball and start, getting frustrated over email. Like that's not professional. And so companies like this want to work with somebody who can keep it together, even if it gets a little stressful. So having workflows in place for all of those different pieces is really key. And being able to articulate it too. So when you're on the phone, you're gonna have to articulate that with them. You're gonna have to say, okay, here's our workflow. Here's our process. And if it sounds like you don't know what you're talking about, that's gonna be a big red flag. So you got to make sure you know those things in and out.
Absolutely. Cool. So earlier on, you mentioned the importance of posting your work online, Instagram, Facebook, galleries, having your own website. So where can our listeners or viewers go to find Grain Mortar's portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. You can just find us at grainandmortar.com. We're also on Instagram, social media. Just find us, Google us.
Google you. Okay. TikTok?
No.
Great.
Not TikTok.
Awesome. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us again today. Viewers, listeners, like and subscribe this channel for more videos like this coming up where we interview other agencies to get some insight into how they've grown their business. Kristin, thank you.
Thanks for having me.